The morning sun cast long shadows across the Texas frontier, and the stagecoach groaned like a dying animal on its way to Santa Fe. Inside, Sarah Holloway sat bolt upright. Her gloved hands gripped a leather satchel like it was the only thing holding her to this world. Heat baked the inside of the coach, but the fire behind her eyes burned hotter. It was the fire of purpose, the kind that ignites when they tell you the man you love is gone. Three other passengers were slumped in the sweltering box: a salesman, an old woman, and a young fellow who said he was heading west to claim some land. Sarah watched them. She'd learned to watch people in her line of work, learned to see the things folks try to hide. The young man's hands were soft, too soft for a farmer. His clothes were too new, the creases still sharp, and his eyes, they flickered to the trail every time a rider passed, like a rabbit hearing a hawk. "Next station ain't far now, ma'am," the driver shouted down, his voice a rough comfort over the creak and rumble. "Should be there by noon." A crack like lightning split the air. The driver's body went limp, a puppet with its strings cut, and he tumbled from his seat. The horses screamed, rearing in pure terror as more shots ripped out from the rocks lining the trail. "Ambush!" the young man yelled, his hand flying to a belt where a gun should have been, but wasn't. But Sarah was already moving. She clutched her satchel, kicked open the door on the far side, away from the gunfire. "This way," she commanded, her voice slicing through the panic. The coach was still skidding to a stop when she leaped, hitting the hard-packed earth and rolling, just like they'd taught her. Riders boiled out from behind the rocks, 6 of them, dust-caked and faceless behind their bandanas. All but one. Their leader sat his horse like a king on a throne, his face bare to the brutal sun. He wore an old Confederate officer's coat, the insignias torn off, but the authority still clinging to it like a ghost. His eyes were cold, calculating, the eyes of a man who dealt in death. "Find the woman!" he roared, his voice cutting across the gunfire. "She has the documents." Sarah didn't hesitate. She ran. She ran for the trees, her heart a wild drum against her ribs. The satchel slapped against her hip, a constant reminder of Samuel, of the promise she'd made. Behind her, the screaming started. The young man cried out once, a sharp, ugly sound that was cut short. Samuel had told her about this man, Colonel Richard Blackwood, a soldier who'd traded his honor for gold, serving men whose only god was greed. Now, with bullets whining past her head like angry hornets, Sarah understood just how dangerous Samuel's truth really was. The forest swallowed her whole. Dark pines and tangled underbrush offered a moment's cover. She could hear them behind her, the crashing of horses, the shouts of angry men. Her lungs burned. The thin mountain air was a thief, stealing her breath. She had to hide, had to find a place to wait for the mercy of darkness. A small clearing appeared ahead, a break in the trees. She skidded to a halt at its edge, scanning for an escape, for any advantage. And that's when she heard it, a low, rumbling growl that turned her blood to ice. Not 20 yards away, a grizzly bear lifted its massive head. It had been feeding on a dead elk, and it was not happy about being disturbed. Its brown fur was matted with blood, but there was something else, a dark, ugly wound on its flank, a bullet hole. Sarah froze, trapped. The riders were closing in behind her, and a wounded, furious predator stood before her. The bear rose onto its hind legs. It was a monster, a 9-foot-tall tower of muscle and rage. Its roar was a physical thing, a force that shook the ground and rattled the teeth in her skull. In that single terrifying second, Sarah knew there was no choice left to make. She ripped the Winchester from its scabbard on the satchel, the worn leather familiar in her trembling hands. She brought the stock to her shoulder and aimed at the charging mountain of fury. The first shot hit its shoulder. It barely slowed it down, just made it angrier. The second shot hit its chest, a solid thud. But the beast was a locomotive of muscle and bone. It didn't stop. It was closing fast now, a nightmare of claws and teeth. So close she could smell the rot and blood on its breath. With everything on the line, Sarah chambered her last round, her hands steady as stone. She fired. The bullet struck the beast right between the eyes. For a second, it was like a statue. Then it dropped, its charge broken in an instant. But 1,000 pounds of dying momentum is a powerful thing. The massive body slammed into her, a furry cannonball that knocked her backwards. She hit a fallen log, the impact driving every last bit of air from her lungs. The bear's weight pinned her legs, a crushing final embrace. Warm, sticky blood soaked through her dress as she heard the hoofbeats arrive at the edge of the clearing. "Search the area," Blackwood's voice commanded, closer now. "She can't have gone far." Sarah struggled, tried to push, to dig herself out, but the weight was immense, unbreakable. A sharp, lancing pain shot through her hip. Her head throbbed. Her rifle lay beside her, the stock shattered from the impact, a useless stick of wood in her bloody hands. Men were moving through the trees all around her, their voices weaving a net of sound that was slowly closing in. Then, just as she thought they'd find her, the voices began to fade. From her hiding place beneath the dead bear, she was invisible. The beast that had tried to kill her was now her savior, its massive corpse a grotesque shield. Darkness crept in at the edges of her vision. The adrenaline was gone, replaced by a tide of pain. She was trapped under 1,000 pounds of dead grizzly, with killers searching the woods. Her last thought was of Samuel, his kind eyes, the way they crinkled when he smiled. "Justice finds a way," he told her once, "even when the path seems darkest." Then the world went black. Gabriel Ghostwalker Blackfoot knelt by the deer track. His fingers hovered over the impression in the soft earth, reading a story only he could see. He'd been on this buck's trail for 3 days, following it west, away from his usual hunting grounds. Something was pulling him. Last night's dream was still with him, a cold stone in his gut. He'd seen a woman with hair like spun gold, trapped under a great bear, her life fading while spirits gathered to watch her pass. You don't ignore a dream like that, not when you have the sight. His mother, a French Catholic, had named him Gabriel for the messenger angel. But his father, a Comanche war chief named Two Hawks, saw the gift in him. He called him Ghostwalker, the one who moves between the worlds of the living and the dead. It was a heavy name to carry. The gift had grown stronger after his parents were murdered. He was just 20 then. Now the dead were always there, whispering at the edges of his world, their business left unfinished. A raven's cry pulled his eyes to the sky, 3 of them circling high above the next ridge. Their pattern was a sign. Something was down there. Something dead or soon to be. Gabriel changed his course, following the ravens now instead of the deer. He smelled it before he even saw it. The sharp metallic tang of blood and the sour sweet smell of death getting to work in the summer heat. He moved silently, his moccasins making no sound, his rifle ready. What he found in the clearing made him stop dead. A massive grizzly sprawled on the ground, its fur stiff with dried blood. It had been dead for a couple of days at least, but it wasn't the bear that held him. It was what was under it. A woman's boot, fine leather, the kind they make in the city, was sticking out from under the bear's shoulder. Nearby, a shattered rifle and a leather satchel. "Spirits preserve me," Gabriel whispered. "Hello? Can you hear me?" Silence. But something inside him, that old gift, told him she wasn't gone yet. Death hadn't claimed her. He worked fast, using fallen branches as levers, pitting his strength against the dead weight. It was slow, hard work. The bear had stiffened, making it feel like he was trying to move a boulder. After an hour of grunting and straining, he finally managed to lift the bear's shoulder just enough. And there she was, the woman from his dream. Her golden hair was a tangled mess of blood and dirt. Her dress was ruined, but she was breathing, shallow but steady. A small pocket between the bear's body and the uneven ground had saved her from being crushed completely. "I'm going to get you out," he said, his voice low and calm. "Stay very still." Her eyes fluttered open. They were ice blue and they focused on him with a startling clarity. Her lips, cracked and dry, parted. "The rifle," she whispered, her voice a rough rasp. "Don't leave the rifle." A small smile touched Gabriel's lips. Most folks trapped under a dead bear for days would ask for water. This one was worried about a broken gun. This woman had a spine of steel. It took him another hour to pull her free, working with painstaking care. She helped where she could, never once crying out, though the pain must have been terrible. When he finally dragged her into the sunlight, He saw the full toll of her ordeal. Her face was bruised and cut, a gash along her hairline crusted with dried blood. But those ice-blue eyes burned with a fire that hadn't been quenched. "Water," she gasped. He gave her his water skin, and she drank in small, disciplined sips. A woman who knew how to survive. While she rested, Gabriel read the signs in the clearing. The bear had been shot several times before the final, killing shot between the eyes. And there were boot prints, at least 4 different men. They had searched this place, and then they had left. "They came after me," Sarah said, her voice stronger now. 4, maybe 5 men. Their leader, he wore an officer's coat. "Confederate?" Gabriel asked, noticing the hoof prints. They were fresh. The men had come back. Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Yes. How did you know?" "A lot of old soldiers turned outlaw after the war," he said. "The Confederate ones like to keep a piece of the uniform. Pride, I guess." He helped her to her feet, his arm supporting her when her legs threatened to give way. "We have to move. This place isn't safe." "The satchel," she insisted, her voice sharp. She pointed to where it lay, half buried. "I can't leave it." Gabriel retrieved the bag and the broken rifle. He watched the way she clutched them, like they were more precious than life itself. This woman wasn't just running from trouble, she was carrying it with her. "My camp is too far," Gabriel said, lifting her onto his horse. "But I know a place. Somewhere they won't find us." "Why?" she asked, her voice heavy with suspicion. "Why are you helping me?" Gabriel mounted behind her, wrapping one arm around her to keep her steady. He clicked his tongue, and the horse started walking. "Let's just say a little bird told me you'd be here," he said, his eyes on the trail ahead. "Or maybe it was a raven." The journey to the Valley of Whispers took what felt like an eternity. Sarah was weak, and they had to stop often. Twice they had to hide as riders swept the area, their voices calling out to each other like hungry wolves. By the time they reached the hidden entrance to the valley, the sun was bleeding across the horizon, painting the rocks in shades of blood and gold. "What is this place?" Sarah whispered as they passed between 2 tall pillars of stone. "My people call it the place where spirits speak," Gabriel replied, guiding the horse down a path that seemed to vanish and reappear among the rocks. "The Spanish priests called it the Valley of Whispers. Most white folks say it's haunted." "And is it?" Sarah asked. There was a challenge in her voice, but the wind moving through the canyon seemed to answer for him, carrying faint murmuring sounds that weren't just wind. "Depends on what you mean by haunted," Gabriel said, his face unreadable. "The dead linger. They don't mean any harm. They just haven't found their way yet." The valley opened up before them, a secret world carved from the living rock. A spring bubbled from the center, feeding a small, clear stream. Caves dotted the cliff faces, their entrances like dark, watchful eyes. Ancient drawings covered the walls, spirals, handprints, strange figures that had watched this place for centuries. "It's beautiful," Sarah breathed, all her suspicion melting away into awe. Gabriel helped her down from the horse. "The main cave has a natural chimney. We can have a fire, and no one will see the smoke. We'll be safe here. You can heal." Inside the cave, he worked with a quiet efficiency that was mesmerizing. He built a fire that pushed back the shadows, making the ancient drawings on the walls seem to dance and writhe. He laid out soft hides for her to rest on, and then he began to tend to her wounds. "You're lucky," he said, his hands surprisingly gentle as he cleaned the gash on her forehead. "Bruised ribs, a sprained ankle. Nothing broken. The way the bear fell, it saved you." "Lucky me," Sarah replied, a grim smile twisting her lips. "Trapped under a rotting bear for 3 days, hunted by killers, and now I'm in a haunted valley with a stranger. My luck is boundless." Gabriel's lips twitched. "You're alive. That's more luck than most people get out here." As he worked, Sarah studied him. He was a man of 2 worlds, the high cheekbones and copper skin of his Comanche father, but his eyes were a startling gray-green, a gift from his French mother. He moved with a grace that was both wild and controlled, and his English was perfect. "You're not full Comanche," she stated. It wasn't a question. His hands paused for just a second. "My mother was French, Marie Devereaux. She came west with missionaries, met my father at a peace talk. She chose to stay with his people. A white woman? Joining a tribe? That was rare. She said the Comanche had more honest hearts than the priests she traveled with, he said, a faint smile on his face. My father was a great leader. 2 hawks. Even his enemies respected him. Sarah filed the information away. This man, Gabriel Ghostwalker, was more complex than she could have imagined. His clothes were a mix of buckskin and cotton. His revolver was an expensive, well-cared-for model. He was a man who walked a line between 2 worlds that were at war with each other. "And your parents?" she asked, then immediately wished she hadn't as a shadow passed over his face. "Dead. 15 years now. Settlers attacked our camp while the men were away hunting. Said they were looking for horse thieves." His voice was flat, but she could feel the old, cold anger beneath the surface. "My mother died protecting the children. My father was killed when he returned to find everything he loved burned to the ground." "I'm sorry," Sarah said, and she meant it. He just nodded, his face a stone mask. He finished bandaging her head, then moved to the mouth of the cave, scanning the darkening valley. "You should rest," he said, his back to her. "Tomorrow we need to decide what to do about the men who are hunting you." Sarah lay back on the soft furs, exhaustion washing over her like a tidal wave. Questions swirled in her head. Could she trust this man? Would Samuel's evidence ever see the light of day? "Gabriel," she said, her voice already thick with sleep, "thank you for finding me." He turned, and in the flickering firelight, his hard face seemed to soften just a little. "Sleep now, Sarah Holloway," he said. "The spirits watch over this valley. Nothing evil can enter here." Her eyes snapped open. Sarah Holloway. She had never told him her full name, but before she could ask how he knew, the darkness pulled her under, into a world of dreams where bears and ravens danced with the ghost of her husband's sad smile. The fever took her in the night. She thrashed and muttered, the truth spilling from her lips in broken pieces. "Samuel, the documents. Judge Holloway must see them. Blackwood will kill us all." Gabriel sat with her, bathing her forehead with cool water from the spring. He listened. He learned. "The Bureau sent me," she mumbled, her voice raw. "Before I even met Samuel. I can't let them destroy the evidence." The Bureau. Gabriel's hands stilled. He knew what that meant. The Federal Bureau of Investigation. This woman wasn't just a grieving widow. She was an agent. The stakes had just gotten much, much higher. But it was the other name that made his blood run cold. Judge Holloway. 3 years ago, Gabriel had been in a cage, a trumped-up murder charge hanging over his head. The railroad wanted his land, and the local sheriff was happy to help them get it. They planted evidence. They paid witnesses to lie. They were going to hang him. Then a traveling circuit judge named Samuel Holloway arrived. He wasn't like the others. He listened. He saw the lies. He tore the prosecution's case to shreds, and in the end, he didn't just free Gabriel. He had the sheriff arrested. "Justice doesn't see the color of a man's skin," Holloway had told him afterwards. "Only the truth." Now, 3 years later, that same judge's wife was lying in his cave, hunted by the same kind of corrupt men her husband had fought against. It wasn't a coincidence. The spirits were weaving something. Just before dawn, Sarah's fever broke. Her eyes opened, clear and sharp. "How long?" she asked, her voice raspy. "Most of the night," Gabriel replied. "You have a fever." She tried to sit up, wincing. "I have to get to Santa Fe. They're expecting the documents." "Santa Fe is a 2-day ride, and you can barely sit up," he said, studying her. "Besides, Blackwood will have men watching every road." Her eyes hardened. "How do you know his name?" "You talk in your sleep," he said, meeting her gaze. "You mentioned a lot of names, including Judge Samuel Holloway." The change was instant. She tensed, her hand instinctively moving to where a gun would be. Even injured, she was dangerous. "What else did I say?" she demanded. "Enough to make me think we have a common enemy," Gabriel said, his voice calm. 3 years ago, Judge Holloway saved my life. He presided over my trial. A Comanche man, accused of murdering a white settler. Recognition dawned in her eyes. "You were the defendant. Samuel told me about that case. He said it was the worst corruption he'd ever seen." "He saved my life," Gabriel repeated. If you are his wife, then I owe him a debt. I owe you a debt. Some of the tension left her, but the suspicion remained. Samuel made a lot of enemies, powerful enemies, like Judge Ezekiel Montgomery, Sheriff William Prescott, and the mining companies they serve. They've been stealing land for years. She reached for the satchel and pulled out a leather-bound journal. Samuel spent a year gathering evidence against them. Proof of bribery, forged deeds, witness statements. He was about to bring federal charges when they had him killed. Her voice was steady, but her knuckles were white. They made it look like a robbery. So you came to finish his work, Gabriel said. She let out a short, bitter laugh. Actually, I came to investigate him. Gabriel stared at her, confused. I work for the Bureau, she explained, her eyes hard as diamonds. I was sent to investigate rumors of a federal judge in this territory who was interfering with corporate interests. They didn't tell me his name. It wasn't until I arrived that I realized the judge they wanted me to investigate was Samuel, the one honest man in a nest of snakes. So you joined him instead, Gabriel finished. We married 6 months later, she said. We continued the investigation together. When he was killed, I was in Washington, delivering our first report. I came back for the rest of the evidence he'd hidden. But someone betrayed us. Blackwood's men were waiting for me. Now Gabriel understood. The satchel didn't just hold evidence. It held the key to bringing down the entire corrupt power structure of the territory. Then we need to get you to Santa Fe, he said. Why would you risk your life for this? She asked, her eyes searching his. A debt to my husband doesn't require you to face down a man like Blackwood. Gabriel turned and looked out at the valley, the morning light chasing the shadows from the rocks. My people believe that when a person dies violently, with their work unfinished, their spirit can't rest, he said, his voice quiet. They remain trapped, seeking someone to complete what they started. He turned back to her. I see them sometimes, the restless dead. I have since I was a child. My father called it the sight. She didn't mock him. She didn't look away. And have you seen Samuel? He shook his head. No, but I felt him. The dream that led me to you, it wasn't an ordinary dream. Something guided me to that clearing. I never believed in things like that, Sarah said softly, until the night he died. I was in Washington. I woke up in the middle of the night, and the room was freezing cold. And I just knew. I knew he was gone. The confession hung in the air between them, a bridge between two different worlds. I need to finish what he started, Sarah said, her voice filled with a new, harder resolve. Not just for him, for everyone they've hurt. Will you help me? Gabriel looked at this woman, this federal agent with eyes of ice and a will of iron. Helping her meant walking into a war against men who held all the power, but the spirits had guided him here. This was his fight, too. Yes, he said, but we can't do it alone. We'll need allies. Do you know anyone in Santa Fe we can trust? A few, he nodded. But first, you need to rest. The trail ahead is not going to be easy. She looked like she was about to argue. Then a spasm of pain crossed her face, and she sagged back against the firs. One day, she conceded, but no more. Every hour we wait, Blackwood gets stronger. As dusk fell, Gabriel prepared a simple meal. The firelight danced on the ancient drawings, and for a little while, the world outside the cave, the world of killers and corrupt judges, seemed to fade away. Tell me about your parents, Sarah said, her voice soft in the quiet of the cave. Gabriel was silent for a long time. My father was two hawks, he began, his voice low and reverent. War chief of the Pentecoca Comanche. He fought the Rangers, and then he made peace with them, because he knew a war would destroy our people. He was a wise man. And your mother? A faint smile touched his lips. Marie. She came to save the heathens, he chuckled. Instead, she fell in love with one. She said she found more truth in one of our ceremonies than in a lifetime of church. The settlers who killed her didn't even see that she was white. They called her a squaw. She died protecting children who were not her own. The raw pain in his voice reached across the fire and touched her. They were two different people, from two different worlds, but they were bound together by the same kind of loss. Sometimes, Gabriel said suddenly, his voice barely a whisper, I can feel them here. The spirits of those who died in this valley. Not just my parents, generations of them. He looked into the fire, his eyes distant. They don't speak in words. It's more like a feeling, a warning, or an encouragement. Can you, can you speak with Samuel? Sarah asked, her voice trembling slightly. I don't call the spirits, he said gently. They come to me. I haven't felt your husband's presence. But there is a ceremony, a way to open the door between the worlds. It's not something to be done lightly. The spirits don't always give you the answers you want. Sarah's logical, analytical mind screamed that this was madness, superstition. But then she remembered the cold room in Washington, the absolute certainty of Samuel's death. And she looked at Gabriel, at the quiet conviction in his eyes, and she knew she had to try. I need to know if I'm doing the right thing, she said, her voice stronger now. I need to know if this is what he would have wanted, or if I'm just looking for revenge. Gabriel nodded slowly. A worthy question. We will do the ceremony tomorrow night when you are stronger. For now, rest. As Sarah drifted off to sleep, she realized she trusted this strange man who spoke to the dead more than she'd trusted anyone since Samuel. Maybe this was what her husband had meant. Justice finds a way, even when the path is dark, even when it leads you to a haunted valley in the heart of the frontier. Outside, a lone wolf howled, its call echoing off the canyon walls. Gabriel listened. Even a lone hunter sometimes needed a pack to bring down the biggest prey. Tomorrow they would start building their pack. A raven landed silently on a nearby rock, its black eyes watching him. I heard your call, messenger, Gabriel said softly. The bird cocked its head, then spread its wings and vanished into the night, a shadow carrying secrets between the worlds. 2 days later, Sarah was on her feet. The bruises had turned a deep, ugly purple, but the fire in her eyes burned brighter than ever. We've waited long enough, she said, finding Gabriel by the spring. You're still favoring your left side, he observed, his eyes missing nothing. I've endured worse, she shot back. The documents in that satchel are more important than my discomfort. He didn't argue. Instead, he outlined a plan. Santa Fe is being watched too closely, but I know someone in a place called Las Vegas, a healer, Isabella Vasquez. She has connections. Las Vegas? I've never heard of it. Few have, he said. It's a small settlement of outcasts, Mexican families, freed slaves, natives, white settlers who don't fit in anywhere else, a place beyond Montgomery's reach. How do we know we can trust them? Sarah asked, her training making her suspicious of everyone. Isabella is my mother's cousin, Gabriel said. Family runs deeper than gold. They traveled on a path that wasn't on any map, a secret trail known only to Gabriel's people. It was a hard journey, through narrow canyons and over high plateaus. As they rested at midday, Sarah watched him. You move between two worlds so easily, she said. I never chose to, he replied, his gaze on the horizon. After my parents were killed, I lived with my father's people, then with my mother's relatives in New Orleans. Neither felt like home. This frontier, this space between worlds, this is my home. As they got closer to Las Vegas, a plume of smoke rising in the distance, Sarah's thoughts turned to the ceremony. This ceremony tonight, she began hesitantly. What will it involve? Prayer, sacred herbs, chants, he said. What matters is your intention. The spirits respond to a true heart, not a curious mind. They waited until dark to enter Las Vegas. It was a cluster of adobe buildings that seemed to grow out of the earth itself. They approached Isabella's house, a little apart from the others, surrounded by a garden of herbs. Before Gabriel could knock, the door swung open. A tiny woman stood there, her face a roadmap of wrinkles, but her eyes were black and sharp and seemed to see right through them. I've been expecting you, nephew, she said in accented English. Her gaze fell on Sarah. And you bring trouble with you, as always. Come inside before you're seen. The inside of her home was a strange mix of Catholic saints and Comanche fetishes. Bundles of herbs hung from the ceiling, their scent thick in the air. Sit, Isabella commanded, pushing a cup of bitter tea into Sarah's hands. Drink. You're still touched by the fever. Then she looked from Gabriel to Sarah, her dark eyes seeming to pierce their very souls. "Now," she said, "tell me why the spirits have brought a federal agent and my wayward nephew to my door, with death on your heels." Sarah's jaw dropped. "How did you—" Isabella let out a dry chuckle. "The spirits whisper many things, child, and the badge you carry speaks loudly, even when it's hidden." Gabriel explained everything, his voice a low murmur, a mix of English, Spanish, and Comanche. When he was done, Isabella stared into the fire for a long time. "Montgomery's poison has spread far," she said at last. "Your husband was a rare man, Agent Holloway, a man who believed in a law that served all. His death was felt even here." She turned to Sarah. "And you? Do you seek justice for the territory or vengeance for your husband?" The question hit Sarah like a physical blow. She had told herself this was for Samuel's work, for the greater good. But in the dark of night, she knew there was a burning rage inside her, a desire to see the men who killed him pay. "I don't know anymore," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "When I started, I thought it was justice. Now I just want them to pay. Is that so wrong?" Isabella nodded, a slow, knowing gesture. "Honesty is a good beginning. The spirits respond to truth." She rose. "You will stay here tonight, but first the ceremony Gabriel promised you. The veil between the worlds is thin tonight. It is a good time for speaking with the dead." She sent them to a sacred spring behind her house to purify themselves. The water was warm, steaming in the cool desert night. As Sarah bathed, she tried to empty her mind, to focus on Samuel. Not his death, but his life, his laugh, the feel of his hand in hers. "I miss you," she whispered to the stars. "I'm trying to finish what you started, but I'm afraid. Afraid I'll turn your justice into my revenge." When she returned, the room was transformed. The fire burned with an eerie blue-green flame. Isabella and Gabriel were sitting cross-legged, waiting for her. "We cannot command the spirits," Isabella warned. "We can only open the door and invite them in." Isabella began to chant, her voice ancient and powerful, weaving a spell of smoke and sound. The room seemed to shift, the walls breathing, the shadows deepening. Sarah felt a strange lightness, as if she was floating. "Focus on your question," Gabriel's voice came, seeming to echo from a great distance. She closed her eyes, and in the swirling darkness of her mind, she asked the question that had haunted her for months. "Am I doing the right thing? Is this justice, or is it vengeance?" And then she felt him. It wasn't a vision. It wasn't a voice. It was a presence. It was Samuel. His love, his integrity, his unwavering belief in what was right. All of it washed over her like a warm wave, and tears streamed down her face. He didn't speak in words, but the understanding was as clear as day. He approved of her quest, but he warned her. Justice heals. Vengeance only creates more wounds. Then another feeling, a sharp, urgent warning. Danger, betrayal, trust with care. An enemy is hidden in plain sight. And then he was gone. She opened her eyes. Gabriel and Isabella were watching her. "You felt him," Isabella said. It wasn't a question. "He was here," Sarah whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "He warned me about betrayal." Gabriel and Isabella exchanged a look. "His spirit is strong," Isabella said. "His work is not yet finished." Exhaustion hit Sarah like a hammer. As she drifted off to sleep, she knew that whatever her logical mind told her, she had just spoken to her dead husband, and his warning echoed in her soul. An enemy was hiding right there in front of them, and she had no idea who it was. The next morning, a visitor arrived, a tall, powerfully built black man with eyes that held a deep, quiet intelligence. "Agent Holloway," Isabella said, "this is Dr. Benjamin Hawkins, a friend to those who seek true justice." "Doctor," Sarah said, shaking his hand. "In Las Vegas, little remains secret for long," he said with a wry smile. "Especially not when it might topple the powers in Santa Fe." Benjamin was Samuel's friend, Isabella explained, one of the few who knew the full extent of his investigation. Samuel had never mentioned him. "For your own protection," Dr. Hawkins explained. "A black physician helping a federal judge investigate powerful white men, that would have put us both in even greater danger." He told his story. Born a slave, he'd learned medicine and come west seeking a place where he could be judged by his skills, not his skin. He'd found a home in Las Vegas, treating the people the territorial government ignored. I started noticing a pattern, he said, his voice grim. Sickness, death, all connected to Montgomery's land seizures. Whole communities were being driven onto worthless land without clean water. I started documenting it. The human cost of Montgomery's greed. When your husband came here, I showed him my records. We worked together in secret. Benjamin knows the secret ways into Santa Fe, Gabriel said, and he knows who we can still trust. The judge's murder made many people afraid, Hawkins said gravely. Some of Samuel's old allies have gone over to Montgomery's side. The betrayal Samuel had warned her about. It was already happening. Who can we trust? Sarah asked. Very few, Hawkins said. Federal Marshal James Cooper, Reverend Michael Abernathy, and a young lawyer, David Martinez, who clerked for your husband. He pulled out a folded newspaper, the Santa Fe Gazette. There's something you need to see. The headline read, Territorial Judge Announces Special Session on Land Claims. Montgomery was calling a special court session in 1 week to finalize all the land grabs Samuel had been investigating. He thinks the evidence is gone, Sarah said, a cold fury rising in her. He's making his final move. This is our chance, Gabriel said, his eyes gleaming. All his cronies will be in one place. If we could present the evidence during the session, it would expose the entire conspiracy at once, Sarah finished. A bold, desperate, and incredibly dangerous plan. But there's more, Isabella said, her voice low and serious. Montgomery is looking for more than land. He's looking for ancient artifacts, maps that lead to hidden water sources beneath the desert. Water is more precious than gold out here, Gabriel said. Control the water, you control everything. There's someone who might know more, Hawkins said. Jeremiah Two Wolves, a tribal elder who works as a translator for Montgomery. I know him, Gabriel said. We fought together once. An honorable man. Can we trust him? Sarah asked, Samuel's warning echoing in her ears. Once I would have said yes without question, Gabriel replied slowly. But Montgomery has ways of breaking honorable men. They sent for Jeremiah. He arrived after nightfall, a silent shadow of a man with eyes that missed nothing. He and Gabriel greeted each other as brothers, but there was a tension in him, a deep weariness. Your husband was a friend, he told Sarah. His death was a great loss. We believe Montgomery is looking for more than just land, Sarah said, getting straight to the point. Jeremiah's face was grim. He seeks the water maps, 7 sacred stone tablets that show the location of underground rivers, sources of water that never run dry. He already has 3 of them. The room went silent. This was bigger than they had imagined. Montgomery wasn't just trying to get rich. He was trying to become a king, the undisputed master of the entire territory. Where are the other 4? Gabriel asked. One is with my mother's people, another with the Zuni. One is lost to the Canyonlands, Jeremiah said, his voice heavy. He hesitated. And the fourth? The 4th was entrusted to my family centuries ago. The air in the room crackled with tension. You have one of the tablets, Gabriel stated. I have kept it hidden, Jeremiah said, but Montgomery suspects. His men have been watching me, questioning my family. Yet you still work for him, Dr. Hawkins observed. To protect my people, Jeremiah shot back. I learn his plans. I warn others. Judge Holloway knew what I was doing. He supported me. He looked at Sarah. The special court session? The lands he's trying to claim are the lands where the other tablets are hidden. Then we have 1 week, Gabriel said, his mind already working, calculating. 1 week to expose him, or he gets everything he wants. The plan was insane. Walk into a courthouse surrounded by 30 of Blackwood's men and publicly accuse the most powerful man in the territory of murder and treason. It was a suicide mission, but it was their only shot. I can get you in, Jeremiah said. As an official translator, I can bring a tribal witness with me. No one will look twice at a native woman with her head down. As they finalized the details, a horrible thought occurred to Gabriel. Montgomery will be prepared for something like this, he said. We need more information. We need someone on the inside. Someone close to Blackwood. An impossible task. Blackwood's men were loyal killers. There is one, Isabella said, her voice heavy with reluctance. She looked at Gabriel, then at Jeremiah. Ruth, Jeremiah's daughter. The name landed like a stone. A complicated history flickered between the two men. My daughter has nothing to do with Blackwood, Jeremiah said, his voice dangerously low. You haven't seen her in a year, Isabella said sadly. She works in Montgomery's house now, as a servant, but there are rumors. What rumors? Jeremiah demanded. That her position is more than just a servant, Isabella said gently, and that her feelings for Gabriel might be used to get her to help us. The room was thick with unspoken words, with old wounds and new fears. Ruth and I were close once, Gabriel admitted, his face a mask, before I left for New Orleans. She blamed me for working with the white government, Jeremiah said, the pain clear in his voice. She called me a traitor. I didn't even know she was in Santa Fe. Would she help us? Sarah asked, cutting through the tension. I don't know, Gabriel said honestly. The girl I knew was a fighter, a true believer in our ways. If any of that girl is left... My daughter is not a spy, Jeremiah insisted. I will not ask her to risk her life. We would only be asking for information she already has, Sarah pressed. One conversation could mean the difference between life and death for all of us. They argued, but finally they agreed. Gabriel would send a message to Ruth, a secret message only she would understand, asking for a meeting at an abandoned mission halfway to Santa Fe. As Gabriel prepared to leave, he pulled Sarah aside. There's more about the tablets, he said, his voice low. They don't just map the water. Together they reveal the location of the heart of the desert, an underground lake so vast it could remake this entire territory. The stakes just kept getting higher. Control of that would make Montgomery more powerful than the government itself, Sarah breathed. Which is why I have to get one of the tablets, Gabriel said. Even if we expose him, someone else will come looking for it. This knowledge is too dangerous. Justice for Samuel comes first, Sarah said, her eyes locking with his. You have my word, he promised. Montgomery's fall is our goal. The tablet is just insurance. Gabriel met Ruth in the ruins of the old mission as the sun went down. She had grown from a girl into a woman, beautiful and wary, her eyes holding secrets of their own. You look well for a man with a price on his head, she said, her voice cool. Why did you come, Ruth? He asked. To collect the bounty? A flicker of hurt in her eyes. If I wanted you dead, I wouldn't have come alone. She looked around the crumbling chapel. I came to ask why the man who taught me to cherish our traditions is now working with a federal agent. He told her everything. About Samuel Holloway, about Montgomery's murders, about the evidence. He told her that her own father was risking his life to help them. She listened, her face unreadable. I've made choices you wouldn't understand, Gabriel, she said softly. Choices I had to make to survive. I'm not here to judge you, he said. I'm here to ask if you'll help us stop a monster. And then the story came pouring out of her. She hadn't just been a servant. She had been playing a long, dangerous game of her own. Montgomery had been responsible for her mother's death years ago, a sickness that came from the poisoned water near one of his first illegal mines. Ruth had gone to his house not for survival, but for revenge. She had been gathering her own evidence, waiting for a chance to strike. Blackwood will have 30 men at the courthouse, she said, her voice hard. 10 inside, 20 outside. Montgomery will use a private rear entrance, and he keeps the tablets he's already stolen in a hidden safe in his library. She had made her choice. She would help them, not for Gabriel, not for her father, but for her mother, for justice. There's something else, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. Montgomery believes the tablets can do more than find water. He has an old Spanish journal that says they can be used in a ritual to control the rain itself. The man was not just greedy, he was mad. He wanted to play God. Gabriel returned to Las Vegas with the new intelligence, but their victory was short-lived. A lookout spotted riders approaching. 6 of them, Blackwood's men. They had been found. We have to go now, Sarah said, grabbing the satchel. They fled in a wagon provided by Dr. Hawkins, taking back trails toward Santa Fe. with Jeremiah leaving secret signs for Gabriel to follow. They traveled through the night, the weight of their mission pressing down on them. Gabriel was supposed to be back by now from his journey to the mountains to secure the tablet. His absence was a bad omen. If he doesn't return, Sarah said, voicing the fear they all felt, we have to assume he's been captured. And if he's been captured, they may know about our plan. They arrived in Santa Fe at dawn, taking refuge in the back rooms of a small Presbyterian church run by Reverend Abernathy, one of the few men in the city who still dared to defy Montgomery. The court session was the next day. The city was buzzing. Montgomery had turned it into a grand spectacle, a celebration of his own power. Their plan seemed more impossible than ever. That afternoon, Jeremiah came to Sarah, his face pale. "There's something I didn't tell you," he said, his voice strained. "The tablet Gabriel went for? It's not just one of 7. It is the key. Without it, the others are meaningless." Sarah stared at him. "Why didn't you say anything?" "It is sacred knowledge," he said, shamefaced. "And I was afraid. I moved the tablet after my daughter left. I feared she might be forced to reveal its location. I told Isabella its general location, but not the exact spot. It's possible Gabriel is searching in the wrong place." The news was devastating. Gabriel wasn't just on a mission to get an insurance policy. He was after the one thing that could stop Montgomery's ultimate plan. And he was walking into a trap, searching for something that might not even be where he thought it was. That night, as the city of Santa Fe slept, Sarah held the satchel of evidence to her chest. Tomorrow she would walk into the lion's den, with or without Gabriel. Samuel's work had to be finished. Justice had to be served. She dreamed of a voice, a whisper on the wind, a voice that sounded like Samuel's. "Justice flows like water beneath the desert," it said. "Trust the current, even when you cannot see the path." She woke to the sound of the church bell, the morning sun slanting through the dusty window. It was time. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe.